Aram here.
Hey,
Hey, welcome to the Creative Commercial Real Estate Podcast. I'm Mike Sowers, your host, and we are live on Facebook and YouTube with Aram Pajian, who was our first franchisee at Commercial Investors Group. Welcome to the show, Aram.
hey, thanks so much. Glad to be here.
Aram, today's a special episode because I've watched you go from just getting into the business to doing your first deal and seeing this thing full cycle. So, just give me a quick introduction on your background for the listeners and a little bit about, why you got into our franchise network.
Yeah, yeah. So I started in commercial real estate when I met you in 2020, but before that, I would say really cut my teeth with experience in sales. So I came through the sales cycle, which is a little different. A lot of people in this business come through either finance or through the banking industry. So for me, I worked in direct sales from 2017 to about 2020, and I was the GM of a direct sales company in Colorado Springs. Um, we had a globally ranked office, which was great, and I ran day-to-day things there. And in 2020 is when I actually found you on YouTube, and we just messaged each other. And you were starting a beta group at that time, and really got me introduced to the whole business. And here we are. So that's kind of a quick overview of my background.
Nice. Yeah. So we went through like a coaching program together, and then ultimately you jumped on board when we started franchising here a while ago. For today's episode, I really want to dive into kind of the mental game and what it takes to get your first deal done in commercial real estate. And now, correct me if I'm wrong, but you had no prior real estate investing experience prior to joining our firm, right?
No, I hadn't even bought a house. So
So here's a guy who was basically a cutlery sales guy, and we threw
yeah.
him into the real estate game. And so, just walk us through kind of the journey and of buying that first property.
Yeah, great question. So it's really the mindset. It was very expanding at many times. So when I first got introduced, it was really just the language, really thinking like an investor. And I remember that's something that you had mentioned was thinking like an investor is so much different than thinking like a traditional broker. Many times I explain to people what I do, and they assume automatically that I'm just a commercial real estate broker, and it's it's really the mindset was just keep getting exposed to what works, and your proven track record, your system, your model. And the mindset was pretty intimidating because I'm not going to lie, there was a lot of unknowns in because there's so many different moving parts, right? You have finding the deal, you have lining up the investors, you have the debt aspect with the banks, you have so many different parts that I hadn't previously been exposed to. So there was a lot of trust in the proven track record that you had and the guidance that CIG brought to the table, and just constantly stay learning. So, to take you back on that first deal, we actually failed on two other deals before we got the first deal. So, we had found a deal in Colorado Springs, and it was a great opportunity, but it had its own obstacles, and that one ended up falling through. And that was after a lot of work. That was about 2 months of full time work, meeting contractors out there, doing a full raise for the project, getting this thing buttoned up, ready to go. And then it turns out, we have to pull the plug because the deal just doesn't make sense from what we found. So, that was pretty tough. I think in that moment you have a real uh, you have to make a decision, and whether that's going to take you out, or whether you're gonna it's gonna make you stronger. You have to have a right mindset, whether you're gonna learn from this and grow, or you're gonna get really discouraged and then just kind of cycle out, which is easy to do, especially when there's so much time and money on the table that you lost. So, at that point in time, I really just trusted that, hey, anyone that's really successful has these experiences. And I just chose to let it be a learning experience versus it being a negative thing. And I think that was such a really good mindset to take at that time, because it was right after that where we actually found the deal that we ended up closing on.
So let's go back to the first deal. Let's talk about the ones that were kind of deals that we had to back out of. Maybe I think we lost some money on the first one. We learned some lessons, so we didn't lose money on the second one we canceled. So let's just go back to the first deal. Give me the high level overview. What kind of asset size? How did we find it? What did you like about it? And ultimately, why did we cancel it?
No, totally. So it was a two-story office building, about 22,000 square feet, and it was almost fully vacant. I think there was one small tenant. We liked the building because it had great opportunity. It was a great. It had all the right problems with it that we can solve, just through renovations and through our expertise. So we really liked the upside on it. When we did an analysis on it initially, we figured out it didn't really cash flow well, but the equity play on it was really high. So it was priced properly, and the opportunities were there on like an operational standpoint. We were able to fill it, bring it to occupancy, and then get a multiple for our NOI. So I think we really like that about it. And what was your initial question? Just an overview of the deal.
So yeah, how did you get it?
Yeah, it was just on the market, and after me and Angel up in Denver, we toured it, and then we just negotiated it over the process of a few weeks, and we came to a really really good aggressive price, and we got it under contract.
Nice.
Mhm.
So then, in terms of the cancellation, like why did we end up canceling this?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think it was really debt security in that we found out a lot about our market, and the local banks, what was in their appetite, and we had a few banks stringing us along. So we kind of learned a little bit about that too, where we even got down to term sheets, and they made an LOI, and we were making some good progress with the banks, but when it came to their underwriting team in the bank, that's when it really got shot down. So we got so far along with the first or second line. We were dealing with the vice president of the bank, and it was good. We got some good traction, but really, when it came down to their corporate team, they just shot it down and changed the terms on us on a dime. So that was really devastating when that happened. And I think I learned, we didn't have a backup in place, which we probably should have at that time. So that was a really, really good learning experience for that aspect. But also, we also learned globally in our market, what are all the banks, how are they thinking, what are they looking for assets, like where's their appetite. And then instead of trying to fight against that, we agree with that. So now when we're underwriting, hey, we're not going under 50% vacancy, we're not doing these heavy value add projects that have to do a very big renovation budget. We're just doing incremental changes and operations to really help bring our expertise in that. We're helping with minimizing expenses. And if there's some renovations, we do that as well. But we're not doing a massive undertaking like the one we did with Bijou, where it was maybe 10% occupied and had a couple $100,000 budget for renovation. Even though we feel like we can do that, we're just not positioning ourselves with those types of products anymore.
Yeah, yeah, that's really good. Um,
Mhm.
so talk to me about what happened mentally. You got this excitement. I got my first deal under contract, and then ultimately you had to make a tough decision to cancel that deal. Talk to me
Mhm.
about like what really is that like to go through that, and what did you find was the key to kind of stay
Mhm.
motivated and continue to go out instead of wanting to quit?
Definitely. So I think it's so early in my career, I guess you could call it. And the mindset is there's so many other deals out there. When you get super zoomed in, it's very devastating when something like that happens. But when you zoom out in the grand scheme of things, if one deal stops you from doing the next deal, it's like that's a bad deal. I wouldn't do that. I would rather just kind of really not have a mindset of shortage, and just know that there's so many deals out there. There's people doing deals. Like the next one is just waiting. What we used to say back in sales is, you're just getting through your nose before you get to your yes. So
Sure.
essentially, this was just one really big no. You know? So yeah, I would say that really helped with, hey man, there's other deals out there. Dust yourself off and just on to the next one.
Did you find benefits of being part of a franchise network where there were other franchisees and you had coaches that were kind of helping you, stay on the right track and move forward to your next deal?
I would say that was definitely the key piece of it. There's no way that I think I could get to where I'm at without that support network, and that that's something that even before I joined, is something that you kind of have, like devil's advocate saying, "Oh, well, you can just do it on your own," and you don't. It's not true. Like I just look at all these key pivotal moments where I had the community, the network. I mean, what we do is so specific and it's really niched out. And the fact that we have a hyper focused community that does exactly is focused on exactly what we're doing. I mean, that's worth its weight in gold. That you can't get that anywhere. So yeah, being part of the franchise network, having the support, having you guys as mentors are there's no way I would be where I'm at without that. So that's a huge part, I think, is finding those relationships or people that can pour into you that can help guide that way. Um, that's just part of the whole process.
Yeah, that's really great, man. Well, it's been really fun having you as a kind of a critical member of the team, and you're bringing a lot to the table, and just in terms of bringing that kind of faith based approach, and really helping round people out and getting people excited, and really maintaining that focus on the things that matter in life. And sometimes in this business, I mean, you're hunting for great white sharks, right? So you're getting maybe 1-2 deals a year. If you're doing better than that, you're really crushing it. But you're not doing a ton of transactions, and so that's the good part of the business. But it's kind of a double-edged sword because there's a lot of days at sea where you come home empty-handed. And so you guys continue grinding. You got your second deal under contract. Tell me, what did you do differently on your second deal than your first deal?
Yeah. Second deal, we hit the ground running, man. I mean, we on day one, we had contractors out there. We were drafting our tenant interviews. We have a sheet that just goes through questions, and we started digging. So I would say that was really it too. Was a real urgency for the timeline and an understanding of what's on the line during that time. Like we really started very quickly versus the other one. We kind of dragged our feet a little bit. Hey, we got it under contract, but this one was night and day different. So this one was a retail center up in Lakewood. I don't remember the purchase price. But I want to say it was around 20,000 square feet, also maybe a little smaller. And this one, we had, I think it was about 4 or 5 tenants, but we had one main anchor tenant. So when we were doing this whole approach differently, where we're just hit the ground running, we found problems a lot sooner than like relatively quickly. Within the first, I would say 2 weeks, we found the problems pretty quick.
What kind of problems did you uncover?
Yeah. So the anchor tenant that when we were doing the interview, it was kind of crazy. We were sitting there and he was behind on rent and he took maybe 60% of the whole property. That's how big his space was. He was it was like a bar, music venue type of deal. And he wasn't current on his rent. And the story wasn't really clear where he was, how far behind he was, if he was on a repayment plan, what the situation was. And it was either me or my partner. We said, hey, when was the last time you were current? And he just looked at us and he says, I've never been current.
You're thinking, man, this isn't exactly adding up here to what we were doing.
Yeah, we were like, well, there goes the plug right there. So like that changes the deal entirely because now now if you want the deal to work, you have to account to re-tenant that entire space and divide and chop that whole thing up. And I mean, you're spending multiple dollars per square foot for 60% of that space. No way the purchase price we had on our contract or anywhere near is going to work. And that's not what the sellers were looking for. So after that conversation, it was pretty clear, like, hey, we're out. And the sellers, they appreciated it. The transparency, everything was fine. They totally understood. I think they just weren't really clear, and we had to waste two weeks on it, but it is what it is, and we got out, and yeah.
So in that case, basically, you started due diligence faster, and you basically canceled faster. So making a quick decision so that you lost your time, but you didn't lose any due diligence spend.
Totally, it was fast, quick, clean break, and no relationships were damaged.
How important do you think it is to have a decisive nature in this business?
Yep, there comes a point where there's two options, and I really think that's a great question, because I think that's a huge part of it that it's not talked about a whole lot. There's never really always a perfect answer that's just laid out in front of you. You just have to trust the process, trust what you've been told, trust what you know, and sometimes if you inquire a few people's decisions, again, it's never ever really black and white clear. You just have to make that decision. There comes a certain time where it's like it's better to make a decision than just keep waiting and doing nothing. So that's hugely important, and I'm glad you asked that question for the listeners, because sometimes we think, yeah, we have a model, but it's not ever a perfect science. There's an art to it that's involved, and I think that's important for people too that you might want to get started in this business. There's never going to be a perfect time, so I think the combination between the science but then the art aspect, where you just have to make a decision and go for it.
Awesome. Well, let's move on to the third deal. How'd you find it? What's it look like? What was wrong with it? And then take me through kind of the journey from there to your closing table.
Sure. So this one was a 30,000 square foot office building in Arvada. It's a 3-story. It's a Class C. This one was also listed on the MLS. It was just sitting there, and I had called on it. It was previously under contract by an owner user group, and it fell through, and then it came back up. So I just called, we toured it, and just ran the numbers. I would say really the underwriting process, we take a conservative approach in our underwriting. If we know that the market is maybe a 10% vacancy, we'll underwrite 12 or 15. We'll kind of leave ourselves a little buffer so our backs aren't against the wall or if any problems come up. But we do that through our underwriting, but not too much, because we want to be competitive also. So did that. We've done that with this building, and things just kind of checked out. So we just kept going through the process. I think we brought it to a deals meeting that we had internally. We started negotiations, and we landed at a really good aggressive price on that building, and got it under contract. We got a good timeline on it, and we started again the same thing. Started on day one. We had contractors out there, debt security. I think we had gotten far enough in due diligence where things were checking out, where securing debt was the number one thing that we were focused on. You really helped a lot in that, and the team at CIG. We had a different approach with the way that we tackled that, where we had explained the whole business model, how CIG is involved in all these different aspects to give them that level of security, just because of the understanding business plan underneath. That's something that we missed before. We didn't really take that time to explain that to the banks and the lenders. So we had really good response. I think we had 2 or 3 that were all on board, and they were kind of almost bidding against each other. And, we landed on a really good partner from Minnesota, and debt security was something that we had right on time. We didn't have to extend any timelines. We actually closed early on that property. So that was something that was exciting. Everything just kind of kept checking out, and we just kept doing our due diligence process, and we secured debt without an issue, which was really big, because that was the thing that took us out on that first deal. So it felt like we had conquered that mountain.
Yeah. So, and this one was a little bit. I mean, it still had a value add, but the cash flow. I mean, there was a high level of occupancy in this building. What role did that play, do you think, in being able to raise the debt and equity capital?
You're talking about Arvada?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good. You know what? That was a key part of due diligence that I had missed in my story was that we had to go back to the sellers and we actually had to retrade. So once we went back, the cash flow was a little light, but we had to go back and let them know, hey, this is where we're at. This is how things are shaking out. We can't do this deal unless we're able to get some sort of a seller finance deal. And for this is the first time I've seen it, but we were able to secure a seller finance deal with zero payments, zero interest for 5 years. So that was pretty slick. Even the broker, I remember, he was like, "Man, it's like I've never seen this before. This is new."
So what was it? Was it like 10% of the purchase price they carried back in a second position, no payments, no interest for 5 years?
That's right. Yep. So they're holding the paper, and then once this thing is, the equity's created, and we can refinance, we can turn around and pay the sellers what's owed to them, and get our investors their money back, and then we'll have a nice cash flowing deal for investors and for ourselves. So it's a pretty slick deal.
Yeah, I mean, I think what happened is we uncovered some things, and the interest rates shot up like pretty significantly during due diligence. And then so we went back and we were like, "Hey, do you want to? We're either out or you can." Oh, hold on, my light went off there.
There you
Uh,
go.
we can either talk about a price concession to make the numbers come back into alignment of where we need for this to be a green light, or we can talk about terms, right? And in this case, they chose to kind of keep the price similar. I think we did get a little bit of a seller credit, maybe, but it was nominal. And then we got this amazing kind of junior debt. So I mean, it just kind of opens up this avenue of there's just a million ways to get a deal done, right? Every deal, like you talked about, the art form is kind of its own evolving creature, and it doesn't need to be this kind of um, one size fits all kind of program. Like it's all cash. I'm going to finance 70%. Every deal is done the same way. We just think about different ways to get deals done creatively, right?
Entirely, and I think the market's heading more in that direction, especially in this climate where creativity is key. I think a few things are in play there. You got to really understand what the sellers are trying to achieve. With that, you can skin that cat so many different ways. If it makes sense to you, it's going to make sense to them. And I think that's something that we sometimes put our minds in a box and we say, oh, well, that doesn't really happen, or that's not really common. I mean, we achieved like I said, a 5 year term with, 0% interest and no payments, and that's not heard of. That doesn't happen like that. This broker that said that is a very experienced broker in our market. And it worked because it achieved what the sellers were trying to achieve. And we came up with a creative solution. We didn't put the burden of having them try to come up with it. That was something that, we came up with as a team. So I think that's really the key of getting deals done, is just thinking creatively of how you can solve those problems. And again, if it makes sense to you, it'll and it meets their needs, it'll make sense to them.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we closed on this thing. Exciting, congratulations, and now we're partners in that deal. So talk to me about after. What were the wins? What were the gotchas? What have you learned since you closed on it that you might do differently on your next deal?
Definitely, I would say there's a few things. I would say even the underwriting. When there's I think we had a good our vacancy was good, but I would probably leave a little bit more buffer room. So that way we can, again, not have our backs against the wall, but we can just kind of get there organically versus having to try to stretch for it.
In terms of the stabilized occupancy projection, or like the speed at which you increase the occupancy?
I would just say that the vacancy factor that we factored into it, just the
Okay.
occupancy. I think we were at about 87% for maybe year 4, maybe 85% for year 3, which is it. We'll get there for sure. A part of that has to do with the changing climate in the markets. Things were a little slow the first few months with showings. I mean, we're getting some now. Before we started, we just got another LOI, so things are starting to come together. Um, our renovations just got completed, just the other day. So I think we made good time on that. That had a part to do with it too. So I might not be experiencing the market correctly because we had a lot of renovations. Our brokers weren't bringing. Nobody wants to walk through an office building that has paint and guys walking through. It's hard to have vision there. So we just finished the renovations, which is great. So they're showing a lot better, But I would say what we would do differently is maybe not have such an aggressive occupancy percentage. That's one thing, and then I think that's the main thing. Maybe also having real specialized technicians checking out each system of the property. What
Mm.
I mean, what I mean when I say that is having a very experienced HVAC technician that knows system controls and understands the computer system and the mechanics, and putting that whole story together. We kind of jumped that part. We kind of just saw the age of it, and I think that's how we got our seller credit. But look, diving into it a little bit more, we're finding that our computer system, I think it's called the BMS is what it's called, has been fried, and we haven't been able to get in since like 15 years ago. So that's just been at one setting for the past 15 years. And that's why people are complaining it being too hot, too cold. We haven't been able to adjust it. So I'm like, okay, this is something that, we're really dialing into to find solutions with. So I would say finding the specialized kind of technicians for each component of the building, and HVAC being a main piece of that.
Yeah, what do you think are the other big kind of components you would recommend that people kind of do a deep dive on?
Yep, definitely HVAC. I would do all the proper. You want to start with a general inspection, and then they'll kind of give you the story from a 30,000 square foot view. And then, if you really actually know a good inspector, they will actually line up the people that you can call to then get another deeper inspection. So that saves a step. So I would say that main initial person that does that inspection, ask them if they will line up. If they sometimes they'll say, we recommend call an electrician or call, whatever it is, do a sewer scope. They should line up those contacts for you. You're already paying them to do that, and the good ones will do that for you. So I would say just starting out with that first initial inspector, to go through and do a thorough inspection. And then from there, just kind of dialing in HVAC being one of them. If there's any kind of plumbing issues or recommendation, I would get somebody to check that out. Also, any kind of main electric components. So like something like an elevator. That's something that's a huge cost if there's an issue there, right? I think you've spent, I think in one of your deals, you spent like 250,000 with like putting one in or something like that. So
Yeah.
that'll take you out pretty quick. So it's like just knowing, if there's any issues with the current one, having somebody to check that out. If there's any escalators or anything like that in your building, definitely getting people to specialize in that. But HVAC being also very, very important for that.
So what I heard is like an HVAC, getting into the brains of that HVAC system, that building automation system,
Mm.
understanding maybe a sewer scope, looking at electrical service, elevators, a huge one. Are you guys doing like roof, like a core cut on the roofs,
Yep.
stuff like
Yep.
that? See if the roof's in good shape.
Yep. Definitely. That's a big one too, because it's about $10 a square foot for your roof. So, that's a couple $100,000 if there's an issue with that. So instead of just walking up there and taking their word for it, I would get your own independent roofer to come, like you said, take a sample and really get the story on what's going on. You don't have to know all the components of it, but you need to get somebody that you trust that can give you the story. If they say, hey, this thing needs to be replaced, okay, well, now I have a piece of information. Now I can go and ask another roofing company, have them do an inspection, see if their stories line up. And then you can really start getting a good story. This is why it's so important to start early, is because you got to bring all these people out to the property to do these tests to get a really thorough understanding of what's going on.
Before your contingency ends.
Oh, yeah.
Which is when you lose all of your ability to cancel and keep your earnest money and or walk from the deal without losing your earnest money, right? So
Totally.
how have we battled against that? I mean, it seems like sellers always want to shave your due diligence time down to 30 days or whatever. I mean, is that realistic? You can get all this done in 30 days? What are you recommending for due diligence period?
I'm always putting out 60-60 every time. If they want to back it down, I'm not backing down due diligence time. It's gonna be maybe the timeline for closing once you clear due diligence. So maybe like a 60-45. But all that means is I just have to work that much harder on day one and really line up funding. So that way I'm not dependent on that 45 days. If they come back and I'm starting to get the story of, hey, you underwrote this thing at 70% or 60%, we're only going to do 50. We're only going to do 55. This is a huge piece of it because, that's cheaper money. The banks have cheaper debt than you would with private investors. So the whole deal changes just based on that. I mean, you pull one lever, it's going to affect everything else above it. So we really want to get that story again before our money goes hard in the deal, and we want to and we like you said, we have leverage and we have negotiating power against, hey, this is where we're sitting, this is what we found, how should we handle this. And the sellers are much more interested in solving those problems when they know you're already 30 days into it, they know you're the right group for it, and then they kind of come alongside you to help you solve those problems. Versus if your money's on the table and the money's hard, they'll just throw their hands up and say, hey, sorry, figure it out.
Yeah, well, hey, I want to commend you. I mean, you're like the ideal student. You're very teachable and coachable. You live life, centered in humility, and I think that's been one of the things that kind of striving, never thinking you got it all figured out, continuing to seek advice from our team internally and outside resources, and ask the right questions. And man, it's I think it's really going to take you far in your journey. And so it's just been exciting to watch you continue to evolve and grow inside. And I'm just so excited for us to do some more deals together. What's one or two pieces of advice that you would have for a beginning investor if they were in your shoes when you were getting started?
Yep, find those people around you that have been where you're looking to go. That's a huge piece of it. And really, I mean, you said it, is just staying humble, just really being teachable. And I think a big part of it is don't act like you have it all figured out. Like if you don't know, it's okay. And I really think people that pretend to have it all together, they don't realize how that comes off. And especially when you don't know, like if somebody's saying something in a conversation, like a broker, or and they say a term, I'll just stop, be like, what was that? Or I'll just ask them, I'll repeat it back and with a question, and I'll say, and then they'll be like, oh, it's this. And I'll be like, okay, now I understand what they were talking about. I don't just keep going in conversation as if I know what they're saying. So I think that's a big part of it, just staying teachable, staying humble. And when you're transparent with people like that, I've heard it said like this: if you hand them the sword, they're not going to cut you with it, right?
Mm.
When you keep holding the sword, it's like it's a little bit more combative. So just staying transparent with people, staying humble, finding those people, and I really think that's a huge part of it. And obviously, like you said in the beginning, it's faith based for me. So really, prayer has a huge part to do with it. I feel like God puts you in the right place at the right time, and can put you places that you'll never be able to get on your own.
Dude, I'm just going to have to drop beat on that. If you hand them the sword, they won't cut you with it, man. That's an amazing word right there.
Mhm.
Um, Final question of the interview is: if you had one day left to live on this planet, how would you spend that day?
Yeah, come on. So, how did Jesus do it, man? He had dinner with the people he loved. I'm Armenian, so I love Mediterranean food. Get the people that I love, and have dinner with them, and fellowship, and that for me is how I would do it.
That's amazing, man. Well, Aram, it's great having you on the show. I think you dropped a lot of information that's going to be really important. If people want to get a hold of you or follow up for additional connection or information, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, email me, Aram, Aram, at commercialinvestorsgroup.com. I'd love to connect.
All right, well, sounds great. I'm Mike Sowers. We're checking out of the Creative Commercial Real Estate Podcast. Today we had Aram. He talked about, the ups and downs of getting your first deal done and things he'd learned along the way. If you're interested in checking out our franchise opportunity, feel free to head over to CREFranchise.com. That's CRE as in commercial real estate franchise.com. We're always open to a conversation with people that are looking to get more information. So thanks for checking it out, and make sure you click like and subscribe so that you can get more free content from us. Thanks so much.